I'm still hitting newbie gains, right? I started to plateau. Like I can track my, how much weight I'm putting on as far as, lifting. And I can still feel like I'm like, okay, I've kind of plateaued out of newbie gains, but I'm still a beginner. But I've created that habit in my head. It's like if I'm not doing this, it feels wrong. I can see myself after streaming with y'all tonight, just going like, man, it's midnight. It's midnight. I could hit the gym. I could hit the gym and just going out there and just doing it, even though I shouldn't be doing it because like sleep is the most nutrition, sleep, then gym. But man, it's such a habit that's it's hard to give up. Got a little broccoli in my teeth. I had some broccoli. Let's see here. I want to give a shout out. I'm trying to wait to the ticker. If you notice on the top, we got the ticker for Patreons. We got a new Patreon. He messaged us the other day. I want to thank him so much for his support. We really got to revamp the rewards because we didn't. Honestly, we kind of just were whatever with the rewards and we just like didn't think about it. But we're going to revamp the awards. I want to get something physical. I feel like, some stickers or something and mail them to y'all. Our new Patreon, his name is Comrade Stu, and he is, I think, from Montana. My man is from Montana, Comrade Stu. Now, if it was his real name, I wouldn't shout out a state or a location, but I doubt Comrade Stu is my man's government name. But I just thought it was cool. We got fans out of Montana. We got some traction on the podcast. Again, we might look like Twitch bums, but we got traction. We got fans. Our main fan bases right now, Louisiana, Florida, Ohio, New York, California, in Europe. Washington State. In Europe, we got UK, including Ireland, Norway, Australia. I'm kind of big in Australia. And like I said, Vietnam. Let me try to fix the ticker so I can. Do I need to fix the ticker? Yeah, I do. Let me fix this ticker. We need a space there after Comrade Stu. Let's see what happens there. See how it looks when it rolls through. I want to make sure Comrade Stu and support are not touching each other. There we go. We got a space now. They're not touching each other. I'm getting pretty good at the Switch thing, man. I'm starting to hit it. Let's see here. I got some topics. We can do a little React Andy. One of the things I think about all the time, I don't know how familiar y'all are with this stuff. Mount Everest. I think about it a lot. I was having this discussion last night with somebody, and they said, "You're an atheist, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I wish I wasn't." They said, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "Man, it's terrifying to me that as a human being, it's terrifying to me that we're blessed with this thing called sentience, consciousness, and it just gets ripped away from us. Unless there is some kind of afterlife, some kind of heaven or even hell, where I get to keep my consciousness, I get to keep my sentience. The cruelest thing of all is just to snuff that candle out, and it's just gone forever. That feels cruel. But when I think about what helps me get through is that the universe is this uncaring, unthinking thing. Unless you can show me different. Believe me, like I said, I'm a reluctant atheist. I would love, love for there to be different. You want to show me something different? Please show me any Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, pagan, Wiccan. Show me something. Show me anything, and you will have a convert. But when you stack these belief systems and religions up to that, they can't show you anything worthwhile. But the thing that kind of gets me through is that the universe is kind of it is an uncaring place. Like it just doesn't care. It doesn't care at all about you. And it's not cruel because it doesn't care about you. It doesn't care about anything. It's just the thing that will function, before you. It functioned just fine before you, and it'll function just fine after you. And you don't have to worry about it much. And when I start thinking about those things, I think about how that's comforting, but it's also terrifying at the same time, of how much nature and reality and the world just doesn't care about you. So I don't understand. I'm looking at this pre-roll thing. What is going on here? What does this even mean? Disable pre-roll. Can now disable pre-rolls by regularly running breaks during their stream. Let's see. When a streamer runs a 30-second ad break, pre-rolls they have 10 minutes. Oh, I see. So we just had an ad break. All right. So that's all that means is we had an ad break. I don't understand these at all. I guess every 30 minutes we have an ad break. Subscribe to Good Morning. Subscribe, and you won't have to worry about ads. For ad-free, look at the bar for an ad-free experience. Subscribe. Anywho, point is, these things, how terrifying the universe is, how terrifying nature is, how terrifying our reality is, that it does not care about you. And something I think about often is Mount Everest. And Mount Everest, there's a couple things that are cool about it. Like, it is beautiful. It's the highest point on Earth. I really want to go to Nepal. I don't want to climb Mount Everest. I just want to be able to look at it and there it is. It's the highest point on planet Earth. Look at it. But it is an absolute monument to human hubris and the audacity of humanity. And I don't mean that in a complimentary way. The idea that you're going to try to go up to this, you're trying to scale this thing where you can, because the oxygen is so thin, like when you're taking breaths up there in the death zone in the summit, you're only taking, in 30% of the oxygen you normally would, and your brain is literally shutting down. So you can't stay on the summit for more than like a couple minutes. Also, some of the mile markers up there are actually dead people who tried to summit. Man, I got a coughing fit. So, when you try to summit Mount Everest and your comrade dies or falls down or falls out, you can't drag him back down the mountain. You just leave him there to die. So they become markers. Be like, oh, we're so far up the mountain because there's Green Boots. There he is, and he ain't decomposed because guess what? There's very little air and it's freezing up. Very little oxygen up there and it's freezing. So you just got a dead guy who's going to be up there till the end of time just looking at you. And be like, yeah, that's our mile marker. The guy who tried to do this before. And we're still going up. It's insanity. No, it's not insanity. It's hubris. It's hubris and it's gall. And to me, it's a disrespect. And it's man trying to master the unmasterable, and it's a disrespect to the natural world to try to summit this thing. And I kind of hate, it's kind of everything that's wrong with humanity. I kind of hate everyone involved, except for the Sherpas who are just trying to make a living, but it costs so much money. It's when you're super rich and you have nothing else to do with your money. So you want to pay $30,000 plus to try to get to the top of the world because you can. Most rich people do things because they can, because no one can stop them. But this mountain, you try to summit it on the wrong day, it will stop you. So salute to the mountain. Let's watch some videos about it. Some of my favorite content. Let's see. Let's do some video watching together. Man, it's coughing fit. Okay. Oh, wow. Most awful MMORPGs ever made. I might watch that later. Let's take a look at, so you guys can see what I'm seeing on my YouTube. That didn't help much, did it? Let's do video watch instead. I'm telling you, I still stink at this. There we go. Why is that not coming on? Well, that's not the window I want. Nope, that didn't do it. Yeah, but it's showing what is going on. Hmm. What if I did this? No. Well, shucks. Absolutely stink at this. Where's my webcam? I don't even know. Oh, there we go. I didn't know I had my mic on. Top body. Oh, is it?
Mount Everest is claiming so many lives. Mount Everest is more than 29,000 feet tall, which might make you think most victims of the mountain die by falling.
Let's rewind.
Conquering Mount Everest was once the holy grail of mountaineering, and it basically still is, though more people are making the attempt than ever. Not everyone who tries the climb makes it home, but why? Here's why Mount Everest is claiming so many lives. Mount Everest is—
I just realized I just turned music down, and could y'all hear any of that? I bet y'all couldn't. I bet y'all couldn't hear any of that music. And here I am tripping about the music. Why was I tripping about the music? So silly. Oh well, it'll come out in a wash. Let's restart it.
Conquering Mount Everest was once the holy grail of mountaineering, and it basically still is, though more people are making the attempt than ever. Not everyone who tries the climb makes it home, but why? Here's why Mount Everest is claiming so many lives. Mount Everest is more than 29,000 feet tall, which might make you think most victims of the mountain die by falling, but that's only the second most common cause of death. According to the BBC, most people who die on Everest are killed in avalanches. The third most common cause of death on the mountain is exposure or frostbite, which—
This is all movie stuff too, so this isn't real. It's not like there's real. We're not going to see like real dead people. We're not doing TOS violations.
Accounts for around 11% of fatalities. Other causes of death include falling ice, rope accidents, pneumonia, or even drowning. Surprisingly, more people—
I feel like they need to go into that more. Like, how do you drown? How do you drown up there? Whoa, that's something we need to talk about. Like, what? Let's do a Google search. Drowning Mount Everest. Can you drown on Mount Everest? Let's see. Come on. This is like a whole article. This is like a whole magazine. I'm not. Let me see here. I'll put this up so y'all can see it. This is like a whole magazine here. I guess that doesn't work either. Damn. See if I can add it. Guess we'll read it together. Nope. Nope.
People die on the way down.
Shh. Be quiet. Let's add you to. Why can't just get added? That's not it. All right. I guess we'll just read it. Drowning. Come on, press reader. Climbing season begins on Mount Everest in April. Blah 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 blah. I'm trying to get to the. Okay. On the morning of the fourth day of climbing, the 46-year-old is suddenly unable to put one foot in front of the other. He feels though he hasn't slept in years, and complete exhaustion has invaded every cell of his body. It feels like oxygen deprivation. His headache has become so severe it feels like somebody is cutting through his skull with a buzzsaw, and yet these complaints are not even his biggest problem. Hughes is at risk of drowning at an altitude of 21,000 feet, and in air that is far drier and thinner than anywhere else on Earth. Yesterday, Hughes was all right, but at his current physical condition has changed dramatically, coughing and gasping for air. I don't understand. Tell me more about the you drowning like fluids. What's bring him down immediately, says Dr. Fear. Upon hearing his symptoms, she regards them as unmistakable evidence that Hughes is suffering from HAPE, high altitude pulmonary edema. The precise mechanism has not been explained, but essentially, I was right. Fluid accumulates in the lungs and prevents the absorption of oxygen after the pulmonary capillaries have constricted. Untreated, the condition can be fatal as victims actually drown in their own fluids. Disgusting. Gross. Yikes.
From the summit than on the way up, and route preparation is dangerous too. A total of 120 people have died while working on the routes, with a handful more dying at base camp, en route to base camp, or during an evacuation. So really, you're not safe anywhere on Mount Everest. Mount Everest is one of the most remote places on Earth. It takes 10 days just to get to base camp in Nepal, 6 weeks to acclimatize, and another 9 days to climb to the top.
Just stand on something for like 5 minutes, bro. Because you have the money to do so. Like, this has been done. You're not going to learn anything that somebody already hasn't done up there. This has been done. You're just doing this for your own hubris at this point. You're putting Sherpas' lives in danger for your own hubris. And don't give me the bullshit about like, oh, this is their livelihood, this is their income. It should be something else. These people should have some kind of way to make a living besides being the pack mules for the world's richest men.
And that's assuming conditions are ideal. It's also expensive. The low-end figure for an Everest expedition is about $30,000.
$30K, bro. $30K. Imagine like putting half a down payment on a house to put other people's lives at risk to go stand on top of the world.
With an average cost of around $65,000. And yet one of the things that's been killing people on Mount Everest is something most of us wouldn't expect: traffic. In a strange and unexpected development, modern Everest has become something of a tourist trap. On the perfect climbing day, you might encounter hundreds of other climbers, all trying to reach the exact same spot. So now, much like your favorite theme park, you have to wait in line. The difference is...
Look at that. Look how ridiculous that is. Look at that's absolutely ridiculous. Like, so now you've got all the world's richest people just in one spot, waiting in line to climb up this thing. It's so gross. This is like I said, this is the world's worst people doing the worst thing possible, and I could honestly care less about it. Absolutely gross.
If you stand too long in line at a theme park, the only pain and suffering you'll experience is the endless whining of your children. If you wait too long in line at Mount Everest, you might run out of oxygen and die. So bring lots of oxygen canisters. Or, just stay away from this mountain and go line up for Space Mountain instead. You can climb Everest from 2 different base camps, one in Nepal and the other in Tibet. The governments behind both camps used to be pretty selective about who got to go up the mountain. Up until 1985, Nepal tended to allow only one expedition on each route at a time. But Nepal is not a wealthy nation, and a single climbing permit costs $11,000. That represents a significant income for Nepal. In total, the climbing industry is worth about $300 million a year. The Nepalese government issued a record number of 381 permits in 2019 and announced no intention of scaling back, despite seeing the highest death toll since 2015.
Ang Dorji Sherpa, who summited Everest 20 times, says he's never seen the mountain so packed.
Do you think things need to change?
Yes.
There are also no official physical requirements for climbing permits, and some of the adventure outfits operating in Nepal are less than strict about who they'll take to the...
So they'll just take your money, bro. So they'll take your money, and then they'll hire the poorest people on Earth to, again, become pack mules for the richest people on Earth who have no business on this damn mountain. May a million green boots blossom.
The summit. That means more inexperienced climbers on the mountain, which means more danger for everyone. You might imagine the best time to visit Everest would be high summer, when you don't have to worry about blizzards and freezing temperatures. But you can only really climb Everest during the month of May, in a very short window of time between the winter storm season and the summer monsoon season. But hey, that's at least balmy spring, right? Nope. At base camp, daytime temperatures max out at around 59 degrees Fahrenheit, and at night they drop to freezing. That temperature drops roughly 2.7 degrees for every 400 and...
They're not even that high. They're not even that high. You know how I know they're not that high? Because they're not even wearing oxygen. Like, a lot of those people in the group don't even have bottled oxygen yet. Because once you get into the death zone, you have to have bottled oxygen. You have no chance of there's just nothing up there is conducive to life.
90 feet of elevation, and the summit is 11,429 feet above base camp. On the flip side, some parts of Everest can be hot in May, up to 90 degrees, especially broad, snowy expanses that reflect the sun. So even in ideal conditions, the weather is going to be bad. And just because you book your ascent during that narrow window doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be safe. In recent years, there has been a rash of so-called blue sky deaths because everyone wants to climb Everest when the sky is blue, and in the 2019 season, the weather window was especially narrow. On May 22, 2019, climbers set a record for the most humans to reach the summit in a single day, with a total of more than 200. No matter how fit you are, once you reach a certain elevation, your body starts to literally die, and you still have more than 4,000 feet to go. At that point, you're racing
What's going on with my webcam? What's going on with that? Why do I have no web? I have no web. Should have webcam. We'll figure it out.
Against your own mortality. That last 4,000 feet is called the death zone because there's not enough air there for the human body to continue functioning. Outside magazine editor Grayson Schaefer described the death zone to NPR, saying, "Once you get to about 25,000 feet, your body just can't metabolize the oxygen. Your muscles start to break down. You start to have fluid that builds up around your lungs and your brain. Your brain starts to swell. You start to lose cognition."
When you are at that altitude, every breath you take in only contains about a third of the oxygen that it would if you were at, say, sea level.
In the death zone, climbers can suffer from heart attack, stroke, and altitude sickness. Fluid can accumulate in the lungs, leading to altitude pulmonary edema, which causes a cough that's sometimes so severe it can crack a rib.
That's the
The
brain
low
drowning.
oxygen can also lead to transient blindness or hemorrhage in the blood vessels of the eyes. And the whole experience is so physically taxing that one study found Everest climbers typically lose between 10 and 20 pounds. As a climber's body fails, so does the brain. Climbers in the death zone can experience high-altitude cerebral edema, which can cause vomiting and impair judgment. Some climbers might actually forget they're on Everest and behave irrationally at the worst possible time. Some climbers may even experience a kind of...
What an awful way to die. What an awful way to die. Or it could be your brain. It could be the best way to die because it could be your brain trying to protect you from the abject terror that you have, the terror of the situation that you put yourself in. So maybe that's the best way to die. I don't know. But it seems shit. It seems awful. Like you've put yourself in this situation. This did not have to be. There's no reason for this to be.
psychosis, and there are plenty of reports of people hallucinating. The conditions make it very difficult to make life or death decisions, for yourself or anyone else. Once you're in the death zone, there's very little you can do to help a fellow climber in distress, meaning that trying to help someone may just result in both of you dying. Is that theme park?
That's why you get left up there. That's why Green Boots is still up there. Because, like I said, it's not... They can't take you down. They can't. You're there now. You're gonna die there, and you're gonna be a story and a trail marker. Congrats.
Park starting to sound good yet? Impaired judgment and high altitudes are not a great combination, but when you add ego and a heavy financial investment, you've got all the ingredients for death and despair. There is a phenomenon called summit fever that exerts fierce control over many Everest climbers. It's partially caused by impaired judgment, but it also has to do with fear of failure and an unwillingness to spend tens of thousands of dollars to not make it to the top.
Again, fucking hubris. What did I say? Fucking hubris is what this is. Oh, I've spent so much money. I have to do it. I have to be right. I have to make it. Like, again, I think that comparing this to Space Mountain is a great analogy because you have all these families who spend, as if you watch the show, you know I'm a Disney adult, I'm a Disney guy, but you have all these families who spend all this money and then they be like, well, we spent all this money at Disney. We have to have fun. We have to. Like, this has to be a good experience. I have too much invested in it. That's the same thing with these rich fucks. They're like, well, we have to summit. I'll leave somebody to die. I don't give a damn. I have to do this. You don't have to do shit. You have the assholeness of the human condition.
You're so close and you want to summit, and you're pulled mentally with this strain of, I want to go up, but I should go down.
People who have spent years preparing for Everest may not be ready to face defeat, even when it's obvious they're not going to make it. So instead of turning around and being humble, people push themselves through deadly conditions, and often they get deadly results. Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more grunge videos about the world's most—
Let's don't check out more. Let's look at more Everest at the street. I'm sitting here stressing about music. Watching this with no music. There I was stressing out. Gosh darn music. All right, let's see here. I got some more Everest stuff.
Mount Everest, the highest mountain in the world above sea level, and one of the most dangerous and thrilling locations for adventurers. Climbing this mountain is the ultimate challenge for experienced mountaineers and daring rookies, the highest of the 7 summits. For those who accomplish this feat, usually with the help of hired trained Sherpas who know the challenging terrain inside.
Again, the juxtaposition and the irony of the poorest people on Earth carting around, you know, on on these, making paths, scouting ahead, and packing in and out all these people's trash, just being pretty much servitude to the richest people on Earth while being paid a pittance is not lost on me. Capitalism is trash.
And out, glory among their fellow mountaineers awaits. But many of these climbers never make it off. Mount Everest isn't just one of the most challenging mountains in the world to climb, it's one of the most dangerous. The combination of the extreme height, the brutal weather conditions, and the unpredictable terrain mean that many of the climbers wind up breathing their last on the mountain. In total, at least 304 climbers are known to have perished on Mount Everest between 1922 and the current day, and who knows how many died before records were being kept. So how is Everest claiming its victims? It doesn't take a lot to die at 26,000 feet above sea level, as the atmospheric pressure is brutal and the oxygen levels are punishingly low. Strenuous activity at that height can be fatal. There's a reason this area is known as the death zone. The body uses oxygen faster than it can replenish it, bodily functions deteriorate, and people pass out and die. And that's not taking into consideration the constant risk of falls, avalanches, ice collapses, exposure.
And make no doubt about it. In these groups, there's a code to where, like, if you can't get up on your own power, they're going to try to summit. Like this little animation right here, they will leave that man or that woman. They will summit before they radio for help and try to get you out of there. They don't give it's every man and woman for themselves up there.
Exposure to the brutal cold and wind, or natural causes like cardiac arrest and strokes. But when people die on Everest, that's not the end of their story. If you're planning to climb Mount Everest, don't be surprised if you see a disturbing sight. A dead body lying on the path of your journey, still clothed in their mountaineering gear. This is because Mount Everest doesn't just have a few dead bodies still on the mountain, it has over 200. Many of the climbers are still permanent residents of the mountain. In fact, one has even become a landmark of sorts, known as Green Boots. The unfortunate man, believed to have been Indian climber Tsewang Paljor, has been on the mountain since 1996, when he died at a climbing expedition. So why has Mount Everest become the final resting place for so many people? Well, for one thing, it's really high. Every dead person on Mount Everest likely has people on the ground who would love to have their loved ones' remains brought down and be given a proper burial, but for many reasons it's just not feasible. Just as climbing Mount Everest is a massive undertaking, so is getting anyone down. Rescue missions are notoriously unpredictable and dangerous for the rescuers. While some people have hired teams to bring down their loved ones' bodies, the cost of such a mission can be around $70,000, far out of reach for many families. And one notorious mission to recover a body even cost 2 more lives in 1984, when the rescuers fell prey to the elements. Everest's destiny seems to be one of the world's biggest open-air graveyards. Normally, if bodies were left out in the open for any length of time, the place would become pretty much uninhabitable. The elements would lead to the decomposition of the body, causing a horrible smell and attracting parasites, scavengers, and swarms of flies. But Everest is a very different place. The average temperature on the mountain summit ranges from a chilly -4 Fahrenheit to a deadly -31 Fahrenheit. But one thing is consistent, it's well below freezing for the entire year. And that creates a unique climate for life and death. Everest isn't a hospitable place for living beings, as anything there for a long time will freeze solid. And that's exactly what will happen to all the dead on Everest. The bodies are frozen in place, largely preserved as they were when they died, save for the significant cellular damage from the cold. But while a body almost anywhere else would be little more than a skeleton after years in place, the Everest bodies, seen by climbers every year, are often reported as looking eerily similar to when they fell.
It's even more of a, I mean, if you want to get really kind of weird and metaphysical about it, like this little cartoon here, like the guy on the left dead and the guy on the right, like at least when you're in the, you die in the forest, you die in the jungle, like you go back to nature, you go back to where you came from. In a place as inhospitable as the top of the world, nature itself rejects you and says, no, you do not belong here. You should not be here. You have no purpose here. You don't get to go back. Like your carbon material does not get to go back into nature. You will stay as you were till the end of time. It's terrifyingly powerful.
Skin is left exposed in climbing gear. This has led to some eerie encounters. In addition to the famous Green Boots who lies curled in a cave with his boots pointing toward new climbers, climbers never know exactly who they'll encounter on their trip. That's what awaited one climber, Lakpa Sherpa. She holds the record for most times reaching the summit for any woman, but in 2018 she saw a shocking 8 bodies during her climb. More disturbingly, one even looked alive, the hair on his frozen body blowing in the stiff Everest winds. But as the climbers keep coming to Everest, a problem is emerging. The pristine mountain climate of Mount Everest is quickly becoming littered not just with bodies, but with the trash they and other climbers leave behind. A record number.
So imagine you've just paid $30,000 to get to the top of the world. And you're like, I'm going to do this nature thing and I'm going to get to the top of the world and say I've done this. And you go there and it looks like a fucking trash dump because of every other rich dickhead before you has left all their fucking Perrier, all their bottles of Dom Perignon from when they summit and drink champagne at the top of the world, and all their camping trash and all their Cliff Bar wrappers and bottles of oxygen and all other kinds of bullshit. And that's what you see. That's what you get. That's what you get to see. That's what you paid $30,000. Fucking idiot.
Of climbers came to Everest as recently as 2019, with over 1,000 climbing permits being issued. And as they leave the mountain, they often don't leave it like they left it. Decades of climbing have left some areas of the mountain looking more like a dirty city street than a remote and pristine mountain. The China and Nepalese governments are stepping up in an effort to remove the trash, but accomplishing anything on Everest has its risks, and getting bodies down is an even bigger challenge. Not only are the bodies on Everest littering the mountains, many of them are in deeply remote locations. While many died of exposure or lack of oxygen and simply lay down to die in a cave or at the side of a path, others died more violently, including those who plummeted to their deaths in steep crevasses. That means some bodies might be wedged deep in a hidden location, impossible to see, except for the next person who meets that unfortunate fate.
Imagine that. It's like so Indiana Jones-ish. You fall in this crevasse and you're gonna die there, and you look to your left and there's just another guy, like not even a skeleton that's rotting, like another eyes wide open, not decomposed dead body looking right at you, and you know that's your fate because you wanted to play around at the top of the world.
But even more shockingly, some bodies aren't staying where they're supposed to be. No, we're not talking about reanimated frozen bodies on Everest, and the odds are good that the Yeti isn't coming out of his cave to steal some bodies. But nature is powerful up on top of Everest, and that power is enough to dislodge bodies from their final resting place. Gale force winds can easily pick up a human body of 150 pounds or so and move it to another location, and shifting glaciers can even move bodies into inaccessible locations or crush them behind massive ice blocks. Even the famous Green Boots was moved from his original location in 2014, making the morbid landmark much harder to spot. The mountain keeps a tight grip on those who rest there forever, and it's a tricky issue in more ways than one. There's a growing pressure to remove many of the bodies from Everest. Not only is the increasing number of bodies potentially becoming a hazard for climbers, but many of the families want their loved ones returned to them for closure. In addition, those who follow the traditional faith of the region, including many of the Sherpas, believe leaving the bodies on the mountain is disrespectful to the gods.
Climbing the mountain in the first place was damn disrespectful.
And there are logistical difficulties as well. Bodies on Everest that stay in one place often freeze in place. Not only may they have become brittle over the time they've stayed there, but they may be challenging to even detach from the mountain. And the challenges in getting the bodies off the mountain are only starting. There are two primary ways to get a body off Everest. The first is expensive and risky, using helicopters similar to the ones used for high-altitude rescues. Pulling off a rescue near Everest summit is always risky, with the high winds posing a deadly challenge to even the most experienced rescue pilots. This is an expensive option, but a more affordable option exists: hiring an expedition to climb the mountain, locate the body, and carry it off the mountain using a rigging and sled-like device. This is a more affordable option to recover a body, but both options carry significant risks.
Again, done by Sherpas, done by the poorest people on the planet. Rich people aren't doing this.
Of adding more permanent residents to Mount Everest. So how does it get determined whether a body stays or goes? Most of the time it's decided by the grieving family, but this is a fraught decision that comes with great financial risk and risk to the life of the rescuer. That's why many climbers are actually settling the issue before they set foot on the mountain, by signing body disposal forms. If the worst happens on the mountain, they can choose to be left on the mountain to rest there, or to contract for the recovery efforts in advance. And if they do choose to have their body recovered, many opt for local cremation, which for European and American tourists will definitely cut down on the cost of getting their remains home. But now, a new wrinkle is turning this frozen graveyard into a more pressing concern. The world is getting warmer, and with it, many areas that were permanently covered in snow are becoming visible once again, including some areas of Mount Everest. Climbers are reporting that grim finds on the mountain are becoming increasingly common, with the snow melting in the warmer months.
Yay, global warming. Yay. Yay, irreversible climate change.
Exposing long-buried bodies that may not be in great condition. Finding old bones is pretty common, and even hidden intact bodies are showing up. This may help bring closure to some families that lost their loved ones on the mountain, but it may also ruin Everest's natural beauty even more. And if the thick ice coating on the mountain continues to melt, it may make climbing the mountain much more difficult. That's why some countries are considering drastic steps. Nepal's tourism ministry has collected names of long-missing mountaineers and sent up large numbers of volunteers to collect trash and bodies from the mountain. Although collecting bodies above 21,000 feet is still a risky operation and rarely attempted, the higher areas of the mountain are likely to remain frozen for now. In addition, in 2021, they banned climbers from taking pictures of any climbers beyond their own group, which they hope will protect people's privacy and keep people from taking risky shots while climbing. But some advocates for...
I mean, I guess. Who's going to enforce that? Are they checking your digital camera roll? Like, I doubt the Nepalese government is enforcing that. They're going to really... You're telling me that the Nepalese government has people that at the top of the world are going to police the richest people on Earth? I don't think so, bro. I think they do what they want to do. You're already on Mount Everest. Who's going to tell them shit?
For the mountain are urging a more drastic step. 1,000 or so foreign climbers are expected to take on the mountain every spring during the peak climbing season, looking to join the more than 8,000 people who have reached the top since 1953. But countless more will fail along the way, some will die, and many of them will leave more trash behind them. While the Nepalese government charges a levy to each climber that raises money used to preserve the mountain, and many climbers use their mission to raise money for charity, more people are arguing if the ritual of climbing the mountain is doing more harm than good. They argue it might be time to close the summit to foreign tourists to keep it from getting despoiled and damaged more than it is. And of course, to keep Everest's collection of permanent residents, many frozen in time, from getting any larger. For more on just why there are so many bodies on Everest, check out Trapped in the Everest Death Zone. or watch places no human has
I think
visited.
we will do
For a
that.
look
Let's
at
check
some
out
of the other
Trapped in the
most
Everest
remote
Death Zone,
locations on the
because I already
planet.
have it on deck.
Here you are again, entering the death zone
Oh,
of Everest
already
for
here.
the second
Cool.
time in your life.
Let's go.
And it's not just called the death zone to sound cool and attract more tourists. The region 8,000 meters above the ground earned its ominous name because of the high altitude and thin oxygen. 95% of climbers require extra oxygen here, and many have died. But that doesn't faze you. You're so close to the peak now that you can almost see the spectacular view in front of you and the sense of relief in your chest. Focused on your ever closer end goal, you take a look at the peaks below, and that's when you see the last thing you expected, a yellow blur to your left. What on earth could that be? You've not been in the death zone long, surely you can't be hallucinating already. And then you see it again. You shout at the group to stop for a while so you can take a better look. The others look toward what you're staring at and notice it too, so it must be real. But there aren't exactly many bright yellow things near the top of Everest. What could it be? Did someone drop their jacket? Did some scandalous littering climber leave some trash behind? Surely it couldn't be a person. You'd woken up early that morning with a sense of anticipation, knowing it would be the day you'd finally reach the summit. After years of training and preparation plus an eye-watering cost of 20 grand to get here, today was finally the day. It wouldn't be your first time reaching the peak, you're not some kind of noob, but still it was exciting. So you set off, feeling about as cheerful as a person who's about to enter a region with life-threateningly low oxygen levels can be, knowing you reach the peak within a few hours. But you'd not been climbing long before you caught sight of the mysterious flash of yellow, and it wasn't a piece of garbage or even an old jacket, it was a human, and he seemed to be alive too. It might not sound like a huge deal to run into a person even on Everest, but this guy was clearly out of his mind. He was sitting cross-legged on a tiny precipice with a huge precipice beneath him, flinching and swaying, and it seemed like he was trying to take his jacket off. This was a man who was probably hallucinating and suffering from frostbite and who knows what else. You wondered how long he'd been here and how long he had left. As you glanced back at your group, you realized that everyone was thinking the same thing. Yes, everyone looked concerned and worried about a man who may be on the verge of death, but there was also a sense of disappointment in the air. Why did this have to happen now? So
I'm gonna see, because they're talking about like the moral implications, the ethical implications of trying to summit, like we talked about earlier, like trying to summit beside or to go back down and potentially save a life. I'm gonna see if I can find like the mountaineer's code for Everest, because it's pretty fucking dark. If I can find it and read. We'll do that after this.
Close to the top. Instantly, you realized you were about to face an important and unenviable choice. Look after this man or reach the peak of Everest. There was no way you could do both. It's too dangerous to stay in the parts of Everest with the greatest altitude and the least oxygen. If you were to stay with the man long enough to guide him to safety, you'd have no chance of reaching the peak of Everest. Years of training and thousands of dollars down the drain just like that. And maybe you'd never get this opportunity again. Selfish as it sounds, it was hard not to be slightly resentful at the situation. But first, you needed to take a better look at the guy and see what condition he was in. So you began the descent to where he was perilously perched on the precipice, and by the time you arrived, he'd taken off his coat and was trying to strip down further. Quickly, one of your companions grabbed him so he couldn't remove more clothing, and
A boy's out of his mind from oxygen deprivation. Absolutely out of his mind. It's like, I don't know, I assume it's something like hypoxia.
together he made sure he put his coat back on. Even with a coat, it was hard to survive here for long. You're an experienced climber. You know what hypothermia looks like, and boy, was this man ticking all the boxes. It wasn't just him wanting to take off his coat. It was the way he was resisting your attempts to stop him like an angry child. You'd seen it before, and this wouldn't be the last time. As you first approached, he turned to you and said, "I imagine you're surprised to see me here." His words took you by surprise. Maybe he had his wits about him more than you expected. But these were just about the only droplets of sanity you'd get out of him. It soon became apparent that he had no idea how he got here or where he even was. However, he could tell you his name, Lincoln Hall, so it wasn't all that bad. Instead of realizing he was in the danger zone of Everest and sitting—
It's a real dude, by the way. This isn't like some, what if story. It's a real dude that actually this happened to.
Next to a dangerous drop, Lincoln seemed to think he was on a boat. He made some comment about what a great boat ride you were all on and got up, raising his arms as if he were about to launch himself off the boat and jump into the water. You and your companions jumped into action and managed to restrain him. Luckily, that wasn't too difficult considering Lincoln was so weak. You decided to keep him restrained on the ground. But who was Lincoln Hall? And how had a man who believed he was on a boat and wanted to take off his coat in freezing temperatures survived so long? So many questions. You rummaged through his coat pockets and bag, hoping to find some further clues about his identity or maybe some supplies. You found he belongs to the popular Seven Summits climbing group, but there were no supplies at all. He was here with zero oxygen and no food. Had someone abandoned him and taken all his stuff? Had another climber seen him alone and taken advantage by robbing him? Both of the possibilities seemed pretty bleak. It would have been nice to have had some extra oxygen up here, but you'd have to make do. You shared some of your oxygen with Lincoln and some snacks, which he ate under your careful supervision. Meanwhile, you tried to figure out what you'd do next. The whole group agreed you needed to call for help so he could descend to safety as soon as possible. The question was, would you stay with him or still try to make it to the top? You give the leader of the Seven Summits group a ring and were relieved to hear someone answer. You couldn't help but feel angry toward the group. Chances were the very people Lincoln had relied on to keep him safe had betrayed him and left him to die. Who would do that? You can hear the shock in the voice of the man who answers the phone when you tell him that Lincoln Hall is in fact alive. He explains that Lincoln's group had declared him dead yesterday and had been forced to abandon him. Last night? That meant Lincoln had survived in Everest overnight with no oxygen despite being severely ill. It was insane and completely unheard of. But the man tells you he'll send some Sherpas up to where you are to help carry Lincoln to safety and bring more essential supplies. You thank him. The Sherpas are an ethnic group native to the Himalayas, many of whom guide climbers due to their amazing capacity to withstand the coldest temperatures and their strength to carry essential goods. If anyone can come to this guy's rescue, it's probably them. Before hanging up, the man whispers to you that the job of the Sherpas is to guide climbers, not to die for them. You don't reply. Maybe that was true, but what about all the other climbers? Surely you can't have been the first person to come across Lincoln over such a large time span.
Of course they
Is this
weren't.
what climbing Everest has come to now? Finally, it was time for your group to make a big decision. You could leave Lincoln here alone and hope that the Sherpas would come and safely take him back to camp, while you made it to the peak of Everest like you dreamed you would. Or you could wait here with Lincoln and ensure he stays alive. Besides, what if the Sherpas didn't even come? You desperately wanted to make it to the top again. There's no feeling quite like it. And you wanted those in your...
It's wild that this is even a choice. It's wild. It's wild what human beings will debase themselves to in a moment. Once you strip away like any kind of rule of law or responsibility to, the tribe of, whatever you want to call it, society or culture of humanity, whatever you want to call it, it's amazing the shit that we will justify as human animals.
Your group who'd never even known that feeling yet to experience it for the first time. Yet you also knew the taste would be bittersweet, knowing the sacrifice that had been made to get there, and if Lincoln didn't make it, you'd have to live with that forever. As you look at your companions, you only needed...
How can there be a choice? There is no choice here. There's no choice.
To share a few words to reach an agreement. You were going to stay here with Lincoln. So now there was nothing to do but wait here and hope for the best. You stay mostly in silence with Lincoln restrained on the ground. None of you say anything, but you're sure everyone feels the same way you do. Mourning what could have been. You could have been reaching the top of Everest by now. Making the right decision was easy, but
even like, okay, let's really like work this through. So let's say you're in this party with these dudes, right? You're doing this for the clout. Like you're doing this for the story that you can tell in a bar or next to a fire. What's a cooler story? Is a cooler story that, I climbed Mount Everest. Well, what was it like? Oh, I went to the top. We hung out for a couple minutes. Like thousands of people, tens of thousands of people have already done. Or is it a cooler story to be like, we were going to mount the summit of Everest, but we found this guy who was oxygen deprived out of his mind. He thought he was on a boat. He was trying to jump off the side of the damn mountain. We had to hold him down and restrain him. And we didn't summit the mountain, and we stayed there and we tried to save his life. Which, spoiler alert, they did save his life. They did hang out there. Like, what's a better story? Like, that's so much more of an interesting story. in a way, I don't want to say these guys are blessed, but they have an experience that literally nobody else is going to experience. Those conditions aren't going to happen again in the way. But these other people who are just in a line, we saw the picture before of a just single file line of them climbing to the summit of Mount Everest. They're all going to have the same story, and it's boring.
The reality of that decision isn't, and it didn't exactly help to have nothing to do except sit and wait while a man lays beside you dying. After a few hours, you hear some voices. People, finally! Could it be the Sherpas? Not quite. Instead, you see two dark-haired men speaking in what sounds like Italian, but still, they should be able to help, right? At first, it seems like they're trying to avoid eye contact with you. Surely, they can't have failed to see a relatively large group acting so unusually. You call out to them and explain that you need help, that there's a man here who's on the verge of death. They shout down that they don't speak English and briskly walk off.
Yeah, they shout down in English that they don't speak English. Unbelievable. Again, when you strip away, you know, the normal rules of society, this is what you're left with, like the richest pieces of shit on earth being awful to each other.
As they disappear, you struggle to process what just happened. Since when were language skills a prerequisite for carrying a man to safety or offering an oxygen mask? Well, bugger it. There's nothing for it but to sit here and wait for even longer. Just as you were about to lose faith in all humanity and suspected that the guy on the phone had been lying to you about helping, a group of Sherpas showed up. Slowly and gradually, you make the long walk down, taking it in turns to support Lincoln as he staggered and struggled. How had this guy survived so long? It was a journey of mixed emotions, knowing your journey was over prematurely, but that you'd most likely saved someone's life. It was an 11-hour trek down to the North Col camp, 7,000 meters above the ground. Hall was then taken to the base camp, and you were left to make the journey down on your own time. Everyone was safe now, but there was still plenty of questions hanging in the air. What exactly had happened to Lincoln before you arrived? And would he make a full recovery from such grotesque damage? Only time would tell. A few days later, you reached the base camp and prepared to visit with him. In a bizarre twist of events, you chanced upon none other than the Italian climbers who had ignored your plea for help the previous day. And yep, you guessed it, they were speaking English perfectly now. But on to Lincoln. The guy wasn't exactly in perfect health. 6 of his fingertips had been removed due to frostbite, and he also had suffered water on the brain. But he was looking well compared to when you last saw him. At least he didn't think he was on a boat ride anymore. He explained the truth of how he'd ended up alone in the death zone of Everest. Turns out that Lincoln was an experienced climber and had made it to the peak of Everest before, but this time, as he was descending back from the summit with his group, he suddenly started to feel very ill and weak. It was a sign of cerebral edema, a type of brain swelling that leads to hallucinations and fatigue. He remembered asking his companions if he could lay down at the top of the mountain, and his group had...
This is a real guy. I just want to show you. This is what he looked like.
needed to carry him down. The Sherpas had tried to revive him with no luck. Lincoln only got sicker and sicker to the point where the Sherpas declared him dead after he'd shown no signs of life for 2 hours. Worried about running out of oxygen and causing more deaths, they opted to leave him for the greater good of the group. And before they went, they took all his supplies for their own use, like the oxygen mask and food. Nobody was sane.
In Hall. Is he died at 56. He died in 2012. Saw that on his Wikipedia. Let's check it out. Lincoln Hall narrowly survived after his ascent on Everest in 2006. He was left for dead at an altitude of 8,700 meters while descending from the summit on 25th May 2006. He had fallen ill from a form of altitude sickness, probably cerebral edema, that caused him, that's the brain drowning, that caused him to hallucinate and become confused. According to reports, Hall's Sherpa guides attempted to rescue him for hours. However, as night began to fall, their oxygen supplies diminished and snow blindness set in. Expedition leader Alexander Abramoff eventually ordered the guides to leave the apparently dead Hall in the mountain and return to camp. Yeah, if they thought he was dead, like, no shame in that. They thought he was dead. A statement was later released announcing his death to his friends and family. However, the next morning, 12 hours later, Hall was found alive by a team making the summit attempt. team consisted of team leader Daniel Mazur, Andrew Brash, Miles Osborne, and Jangbu Sherpa. His last name is Sherpa? Damn. Hardcore. Osborne described the scene just below the second step. Sitting to our left, about 2 feet from a 10,000-foot drop, was a man not dead, not sleeping, but sitting cross-legged in the process of changing his shirt. Jesus Christ. He had his down suit unzipped to the waist, his arms out to the sleeves, was wearing no hat, no gloves, no sunglasses, no oxygen mask, regulator, ice axe, oxygen, no sleeping bag, no mattress, nor water or food or water bottle. I'm surprised. I imagine you're surprised to see me here. Yeah, bro, I am surprised to see you here getting bucket naked on the side of the damn Mount Everest. He said now this was a moment of total disbelief to us all. Here was a gentleman, apparently lucid, who had spent the night without oxygen at 8,600 meters without proper equipment, barely clothed and alive. That's insane.
Enough to have a good idea of what had happened after that, but it seems like Lincoln probably fell asleep, then wandered off, gradually getting sicker. We'll never truly know how he survived. He's not the only one who has survived such a crazy feat. Another climber, Beck Weathers, was left for dead on Everest, but ended up making his own way back to camp.
I've heard about that guy. So they left him for dead, just like he says, and he was passed out completely. He got to his feet completely just frostbitten to shit, and just made his way down the mountain like a monster, and just showed up in their tent and was like, I'm back. And they were like, holy shit, they thought they saw a zombie.
For more crazy real-life stories, check out our videos about passengers who survived a plane crash in the Andes and a soldier who survived falling into an active volcano.
Oh, this is his whole thing. Miracle on Everest, the Lincoln Hall story.
The 2006 Everest climbing season became the most controversial ever.
Oh, no. I wanted to do this thing. This off.
Support for NPR and the following message come from Green Cars by Lithia Motors, an online resource for learning about and shopping for electric and hybrid vehicles. When users explore the new Green Cars Buyer's Guide, they can also reference an incentives calculator to find an electric vehicle that fits their budget. Click the play button below to meet Senior Brand Manager Kevin Jennings, who shares more about how Green Cars tools and resources work hand in hand.
Green Cars, you owe me some money now.
From NPR News, it's Day to Day. May is mountain climbing season in the Himalayas. This has been one of the deadliest ever. At least 10 climbers have died.
Among the dead is a solo English climber, David Sharp. He was on his way down Mount Everest last week. He'd run out of oxygen and stopped about 1,000 feet from the top of the mountain. As he lay there, a climbing team on the way up passed by and left him while they continued their own attempt to summit.
Ed Viesters is among the most accomplished American climbers today. I spoke with him earlier about his reaction to the story of the abandoned climber.
I wasn't surprised. I mean, I've heard of it before, and it is a scenario that does occur, especially high on Mount Everest.
Well, is there a kind of a creed among mountain climbers about what to do in this situation? Sir Edmund Hillary, probably the most famous climber in the world, says he's appalled by this.
Well, I am as well. You know, and there is no hard, fast rule. It's just an issue of what's right and what's wrong and what can you live with at the end of the day. There's a situation when you're going up and you've expended a lot of time and energy and money and you're very, very close to the summit, and you don't want to be distracted by anything, even if it's a human life. And I don't understand that personally.
Thank you for saying he didn't. I was like, I want to thank him for not co-signing on that and not making himself seem like the biggest piece of human garbage to walk this earth. So that's really awesome for him to say that, because that's trash, son. Forget that. That's no.
Climbers who went by this man, David
Mm-mm.
Sharp, is a New Zealander by the name of Mark Inglis. He's a double amputee, and he was trying to become, and he did become, the first double amputee to reach the top of Mount Everest. So it's a kind of a weird thing, isn't it?
It is. I mean, if you're trying to set a record or trying to be the first, I mean, you're even more motivated. And people are literally climbed over as people pass by.
Apparently, this man was in very bad shape, and someone from Mr. Inglis's expedition said they didn't think that he could survive under any circumstances, but you never know, do you?
Well, look what happened to Beck Weathers in 1996. People assumed that he would not survive, and he was literally left lying out there, and he did survive.
This is the man on the expedition that became the subject of John Krakauer's book Into Thin Air, the expedition where several climbers died trying to reach the top and to get back down safely.
Correct. And if someone is dying, there's hope. If they're alive, there's hope. And you then try to help this person get down off the mountain. It is very difficult at those altitudes to do this.
To get someone down the mountain. I mean, would you be jeopardizing your own life to try to carry someone down the mountain?
Well, you have to be careful and you have to assess that situation. You know, we've brought people down from the south summit of Everest, 28,700 feet. So it is possible. People that have been incapacitated, and by sliding them and pulling them and pushing them, you are able to do that with a big enough group. But some people, you know, passing by a dying climber is much less important than reaching the summit of Mount Everest.
Sadly. I hate people so much.
Mountain climber Ed Viester is speaking with us from his home near Seattle. Ed, thank you.
You're welcome.
So yeah, that's an indictment on why human beings were a mistake. That sucks. Hour 30 in. I don't know. I'm kind of done talking. I mean, I still want to talk, but it's just kind of want to play some games. So let's get some gaming in. Let's play some, I don't know, we could play Aliens or we could play Hardcore Diablo 3. I think I want to play Hardcore Diablo 3 so I can just kind of relax and zone out. So I'm going to get that set up and I'll be right back.